Well, hello.
Oh,
Welcome
it's been a
back.
bit.
Yeah. Uh, I don't think to you guys you'll see much of a difference because we had a long backlog and we haven't po- posted them. But it's been about 2 weeks since we last recorded.
Something like 2 weeks, and over that time, we've both been busy, and you've gotten sick.
Yes. Yeah. So if you hear occasional coughing, spluttering, I will try my best to die quietly. But if not, my apologies.
I think that's probably why we've chosen the topic for today to be the I say three, more like 5-shot adventure that happened in between Campaign 1 and Campaign 2.
Yeah, kind of picking up exactly where we left it last session or last episode, and just kind of hopefully kind of finishing the story, but also dealing with some questions that we had, or at least I had, at the end of the campaign.
Yeah. So where did we actually get to last time? Because I remember we talked about the dwarves, and we talked about Stone Shelf and a little bit about Living Stone.
Yes. So I think before we kind of went into the dwarven origin story or the dwarven reproduction story,
Yeah.
I think we had kind of covered the fact that, or the main characters, that was Ricardo, Calrad, Crawford, and Generald, kind of arriving back or arriving for the first time into this town, meeting these people, meeting Apothis in particular, and then getting up to their kind of shenanigans, and then kind of going around town. I think from there, I don't know if we got the dreams then or.
Well, in the first night in the tavern, you got the dreams. So we had one person dreamt of a woman in the crag with inhuman eyes. One person dreamt of the battlefield. In fact, a few people by the end had dreamt of the battlefield. One person, I think, dreamt of a silvery glade with a sword in it. And another dreamt of, I think it was a town encased in mist or in fog.
I think
and those were the initial dreams.
Calrad dreamed of the battle.
Yeah. So each of those places were a location in the fog. So the crag was a place that you went to, and that was where I think that might have been. I want to say that was. Who did we have again? We had Crawford.
I think it might have been Ricardo that dreamt of the crag.
Yes. No, you're right. Yeah, it was Ricardo. And then, of course, Calrad dreamt of the fields, so the field of bodies, and the town of Wake was dreamt of by.
I think Crawford.
I think it might have been Crawford, and then Generald, I think, dreamt of the Silver Glade, which was a place that you guys never visited.
Yeah.
But that was essentially a fey glade with a sword in it. Maybe you did. Essentially, the idea was that it was an area encased in a constant moonbeam.
Ooh, that's quite cool.
So, yeah. So the artifact inside was protected from the denizens of the shadow because there was constant radiant damage blasting down. And it wouldn't have been like a, second level moonbeam. It would have been fifth. So, it's not going to stop anything super, super dangerous, but then anything that's that high level that it would have no trouble probably wouldn't find the artifact very interesting. So, it was a deterrent based around the strength of the spell.
Okay. And what was the item? Was it just kind of a magical sword?
It was a magical sword called the Moonblood Blade, which grants the wielder a wish on a solar eclipse, which, the final boss was called Eclipse, and when he covered the sun during the final battle, I would have been like, and here you stand, in the eclipse, you get one wish. But no one ever went there. Yeah, so there could have been a funny moment there, depending on who got the blade. But yeah, it never ended up mattering. Another place you never visited was the labyrinth, which was a tree labyrinth, which was a place where it's sort of essentially what it sounds like. It's a maze of woodland and trees and growth.
Yeah.
And then in the very center is a sort of circle of old druids that had killed themselves summoning a guardian of the forest. So it's a sort of larger, a much bigger fey creature that can teleport between trees. Like it steps behind a tree and like in a cartoon, it's just gone, even though it's really huge. So it can tree step. Yeah. Really, really fucking dangerous.
Yeah.
Like that, I remember designing thinking, well, this thing could probably one hit a wizard. Like, that'd be fine.
I don't know if you do remember this. I think maybe I'm moving a little bit ahead for the listeners. But we have a similar encounter in near the start of campaign 2, where near where one of the characters' bases is, these kind of dead beings in trees. I never had the idea of kind of like using them to kind of teleport around the place. That's quite a cool idea.
Well, the whole concept of the teleporting was like, okay, so you're in a fog, you're not in a real space. So you have the sort of same rules that you'd have in a dream. So this creature, essentially, as soon as it goes out of sight, it loses object permanence. So if it's out of sight, it's literally not existing until it comes back into vision somewhere else. So the sort of idea of it was like, close to a Misty Step. But only for a really big creature.
And so I guess before we kind of get into the locations and the events that followed, I do have a question about the mist. Largely, like, what was it? You hinted at it being very magical throughout. And
the fog.
Yeah.
So the idea behind the fog was that it was essentially like the fog in Strahd. It sort of separated. It was a fuzzy border between real space and an alternate pocket dimension. And that pocket dimension was the phylactery. So essentially, you guys had entered into the radius of a mist, and the mist pulled people's physical forms or their souls, not always consistent, and into the phylactery. So as soon as you went into the mist, you were inside the icy phylactery of the Lich. And the space you were exploring was the Lich's mind.
And I suppose that would also then kind of cover the time dilation, like oddities that occurred. It's more
it was the sort of rules of a dream. Time isn't always the same. Things can stretch or be quicker.
Okay.
Yeah. Spaces aren't always as far apart as they, space and time aren't consistent. Actually, speaking of which, if you look in the image in Nick's side quest, the second image I posted, at the very back, you've got the what I titled the antlered shadow poking out from behind a tree. That would have been the thing. You would have seen it behind a tree, and then it would have appeared in front of you and murdered you.
Oh wow! Yeah, it looked like a Wendigo.
Yes, that is exactly the inspiration. That was the inspiration I got was largely the Wendigo with that sort of big antlered form.
Classic skinwalker.
Yeah, like horror druid, like nature, but if nature was terrifying.
We'll post on the screen. We'll have Nick's image, but also an image of the Wendigo itself.
Compare them.
You'll be able to get review his art piece.
Oh man, please don't. My art is like some of my art I'm proud of. Like here, I think we're going on to the campsite, but the campsite image is not one that was amazing. Besides maybe the tents.
No, but you do a really good job of like when you make these, because one thing if you do as a DM when you run these kind of these short quests, you often draw these sketches, and it's really good for kind of giving an atmosphere of the location to the players, and also conveying exactly what it would look like without having to kind of go into a long explanation.
Well, that was always one of my pet peeves with D&D is that without having a visual image of what you're looking at, the scene, players don't always realize what's there that they can use, you know? Because if you don't go through the labor of explaining every tiny little rope and bottle that's on a shelf, players aren't going to know that you can use them. So I think, a picture paints 1,000 words. So it's a very efficient way of storytelling very quickly.
I see.
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, it's that math equation. If one picture equals 1,000 words, how come I can't do a dissertation in 10 pictures?
well, I did try and submit it. It was just a shame that they told me that this wasn't what I should do, and then immediately failed me.
Yeah. Next time.
So after these point and events that happen in the town, the party then kind of move out into the forest. Do you remember the first place we went to?
Yes, you went to the campsite first. So you had only just entered and you'd been walking, you'd heard some eerie things, you'd seen some faces in the fog, you'd noticed that the trees around you were a little weird because they all looked fairly similar, like someone had copied and pasted the same tree over and over. Because the idea was that there was only one, like that was the idea when the Lich thought of a tree, that was the tree that came to mind. So he just made a forest of these trees.
Okay.
Like auto-generating.
And so then can I ask, is the kind of, you mentioned that the forest was almost like the connective tissue of these like kind of fragmented memories. These memories themselves, are they memories from the Lich or from beings inside the Lich's phylactery?
Well, it was a mix. I mean, the Lich has to, at some level, combine the souls of the victims that he eats in order to survive. He takes on, not just their energy, but also their information. I mean, the soul is the makeup of a person's memory and identity. In order to consume that, you would be taking on part of them. So there was a sort of big soup of people's ideas of what was and what wasn't there. Which is why you had a bit of the time sort of stuff later on, where you had people had the idea of, well, this is now. And then some people thought this is now. And, there was a bit of discrepancy over when things were.
In that case, I guess maybe would it be that the people that were the Lich was consuming their souls more actively would be experiencing time faster?
Yes. So when you went to Wake, you saw that on a sort of bigger scale. So we'll get to that in a bit. Okay. I want to talk about the first location was the campsite, where you encountered Beavis and Butthead, two of the people you met from Stone Shelf, who'd been in there. They said they were in there for weeks. So that was where you first encountered the idea that time might be relative. And one of them didn't survive. I think one of them was already dead. And the one that survived, you sort of patched up, Ricardo had managed to sort of stop the bar fight before, so you didn't immediately butcher them and they weren't hostile. But he did then run off with your supplies when you weren't looking.
It's thieving bastards.
Well, that was me trying to get you to rely on the bag of holding that I had mysteriously placed in the campsite, which contained a hand hydra. Lots of people thought it might have been like the Bagman, I think.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, I haven't watched that video. I have no idea what the Bagman is. I just know it has something to do with a guy hiding in a bag of holding.
Okay, so I don't know what a Bagman is, but what is a hand hydra? Because
a hand hydra is literally, imagine a sea anemone made of arms with hands at the end.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So essentially, it was like a huge sea anemone sort of stuck inside this memory vault inside the bag of holding. And it was trying to pull people in to essentially just, kill and eat them.
And was this bag of holding kind of something that was existing in the Lich's... So was it a kind of, this magic item, a creation of the Lich's memory, or was it something that had been brought into it by one of these other people that had been consumed?
Oh no, it was always there.
Okay.
That was the sort of, I wanted to give the players a way to access this memory vault, because that was the world of books. It was the world, sort of his own memories.
Okay.
And so I wanted to give you access to that early on, so that when you thought you were ready, you could go in and take what you wanted. But, you know, there had to be a guardian, someone to stop you from immediately finding all the answers, and that was the Hand Hydra.
Okay.
Which did nearly kill, I think, was it Generald?
Yeah, I think
the first time you
Generald
fought it?
kind of climbed through and was yeah, it was close. I don't,
Yeah.
honestly, that fight seemed a little bit like a fever dream, because I remember throwing the bag as a weapon at someone, but it wasn't just crazy.
Well, I think in my mind, the image I had was the bag pulling itself off the ground with the arms that had come out of it and walking like a sort of demented hermit crab. So it's a really tiny bag, but a huge number of arms are coming out and walking underneath it.
Yeah, that's not a nice image, Nick. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you guys dealt with it like professionals, and you moved on pretty quickly to the crag.
Yes.
Which was the sort of dream quest of Ricardo.
Yeah.
And there you found, Relpis, I believe the name of this creature was.
Yeah.
She was fighting off minor celestials. So minor celestials, creatures that the Lich had eaten because they contained, you know, powerful souls, celestial creatures. But I was looking for celestials in, you know, like D&D books, and lots of the minor celestials are kind of boring.
Yeah.
And there aren't very many like Old Testament celestials. So I thought it would be nice to have the celestial equivalent of the imp. So I was thinking more along the lines of like a will-o-wisp or the wisp from Warcraft as sort of motes of light, which might have had form before the Lich started consuming them.
Yeah.
But now they were floating out there, sort of confused and aggressive. And they were attacking this woman. And so the party went out to save her, except for Calrad, who saw celestial, angelic creatures. And what did he do, Chris?
Well, being the based priest that I was, I saw the party, these random strangers that I'd never met. And one of them, Crawford, was a bureaucrat, which I never really got into, but Karen has a deep despising of like a politician.
Really?
Largely because he sees them as massively interfering with the church. And
I see. So he doesn't quite recognize like the similarities between church and state.
Yeah. So he just sees like, why should there be an issue? The church is clearly the better one. And so like his approach and looking at it was, well, this politician is now attacking celestials. And so Crawford looked a little bit like the ringleader. And so I charged into the back of him on the horseback and smited him, you know.
Damn, that was brutal. Especially since it was already a pretty brutal fight. I mean, the people that were fighting the angels were having their max HP drained away, which, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that was the fog eating their soul.
Oh, that's a beautiful little addition. And can I ask, were those max hit points ever restored after the count?
They were, but only after they got to the saint's bones.
Ah, okay.
So sort of, yeah. Only quite a lot later, and they had received a lots of other max HP reducing attacks in the meanwhile. But yeah, the party managed to knock you out, before you managed to kill one of them, although it came close.
What I think happened and did it for me was Karad charged through some of these Celestials, not hitting them, but they then zapped him, which lowered his HP. And then I think I knocked Crawford down, and someone healed Crawford up immediately, and he just turned around and doing some kind of monk shit.
Oh, that's right.
Just battered my face in like a turn. I was like, well, my betrayal hasn't worked.
Yeah, the backstab really got Uno Reverso'd on you.
Yeah.
Monks, man. Jeez.
It's the classics like rock, paper, scissors, monk beats lance wielding paladin. It just it's a simple counter. That's all it is.
Yeah.
But I guess
the meta was not merciful on you that day, and your unconscious body got dragged off by weird celestial zombies.
Yeah.
Which is probably the best way to describe them.
Yeah, there was. I mean, it was a reality check for Karad. I think to a certain extent, but even though he was kind of unconscious, I feel like deep down he was happier than being in close proximity to Crawford.
I mean, so in terms of a reality check, how did that change Calrad's position on, like, so I imagine he would have, he saw the angels, he had a burst of faith, and then he was attacked by an angel, and then he got dragged away. Like, how did that change his initial assumption of how this adventure was going?
Well, I think Kara kind of rocked up with a set idea that, this miss has a problem. It's got an issue. He's going to solve it because he's, a mixture of like a witcher and a priest. This is what he does for a living. He's professional. And I think at that point he realized maybe I don't know what's going on. And I'm a small fish in a very big pond. The issue, though...
It got him a sense of scale. Yeah.
Yeah. However, I wouldn't say that Karad felt that he had done anything wrong. In his eyes, it was clear that the Celestials attacked him because of the rest of the group that was attacking him. It was a confusion. And if he was given the opportunity to talk to them, they would understand that he too was a man of God, and they would just, chill out a little bit.
But here's the thing. That could have happened. The angels were initially hostile, mostly only to Relpis.
Yeah.
Because of what Relpis was. She was a dream eater, which was like a particularly deadly enemy inside the Lich's mind. Yeah. She could have really fucked him up. Fucked him up. So these were sort of the Lich had sort of sent these things out to deal with her unconsciously. And they were trying to get rid of her. So if you had killed Relpis, the angel celestial motes would have pacified. They would have stopped fighting you. They would have stopped attacking you, and they would have just sort of floated there mysteriously. And talking to them would have been difficult because it would have been like talking to the aliens in Close Encounters. Yeah, like you had to, like they would have been talking in like piano notes.
Yeah.
Do 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 do.
Well, Karad speaks the language of interpretive dance. I'm sure he'd be able to get some kind of message across.
I think he would have. Yeah, the intention at least. Something purge.
It would be something purge, something kill Crawford, something politicians.
Yeah, but that wasn't going to fly with Ricardo.
Yes, who at this point had been established was effectively Crawford's lapdog.
That's right. Yes, General and Ricardo swore fealty and service to Crawford.
Yep.
He'd sort of scammed them into thinking that he was some really big shot general guy.
But I think following on from what happens with Relpis, I remember that. Is it true that Relpis, I think, puts Ricardo to sleep and then starts eating his memories, or trying his dream?
Well, that happens. So essentially, you get dragged away.
Yeah.
You actually go to a place that the other players didn't visit, Ghoul Town, which was a place where if you had gone there, it would have been identical to Wake, but all of these civilians would have been undead, and they would have been still sentient. They just would have been really miserable.
Okay.
There really wouldn't have been that many hostile undead, except for the town preacher and Apophis, who was sort of rallying the undead and getting more of the undead to go to the mines. And then he took you as a blood bag because he had no other real blood in that region.
Yeah.
Apophis probably saw that as fairly like tame, hanging you on a sort of banner with pipes attached to you and drawing blood. Like for Apophis, this is fine. He'll probably forgive me afterwards. I didn't decapitate him. That would have been the mean thing to do.
Yeah. I think Karad saw that somewhat differently.
Yeah. Okay. No, you didn't appreciate the mercy that I gave you?
Yeah. The thing with Karad is he's not the biggest fan of like other religions or non-humans in general. Or in this case, in general. So when I woke up, Karad was like, it was like, I wouldn't say naked and afraid. It was more that he was naked and rather annoyed.
Naked and angry.
Yeah. And I guess he was just kind of buying time. Admittedly, Karad woke up, to my knowledge, because we had effectively, I think the party went off to do one other thing. And then I read them.
Yeah, the party went off to Wake, and you,
carried back.
You essentially woke up when Apophis was making his way to Wake. So while you were unconscious and away, because you missed that session, the party went to Wake, which was an identical copy of Stone Shelf in terms of the living stone structures, but all of the other structures, the wooden ones and like normal stone, were completely different.
So, and why was that? Was that because the people had just been living there longer?
It's because the town was the same town. This version of Stone Shelf was the original version. So Wake was there when it was founded, because the residents there told the party that they remembered the town's founding. The mayor, or the founder, the first mayor, before he was replaced, was Durok Thar, the wizard who had constructed the living stone walls and who had founded the town. And who had also made a contract with the people of the town, allowing them allowing him access to their dead bodies to create the dead mines. Extremely dangerous, noxious caverns that were made accessible because it was undead doing the work rather than living people. So they had a nice income of raw resources, and the people of the town sort of saw it as a sort of, well, I can help my descendants even after I've grown withered and old. Yeah.
Quite a nice way of looking at necromancy, I guess.
Yeah. Well, like, sort of, so long as it's, you have the right sort of view of death and how you view your dead body. Yeah. Like, it could be a rather charming thing.
Yeah.
Of course, it didn't go all to plan. Ghoul Town was identical to Wake, but it was after Durok Thar had died. Because after he died, the town went to shit and they all became undead. Because the curse of that contract spread out completely without someone managing it. And so everyone became undead and it became shit and terrible. And then that town vanished after, a few thousand years. And then finally Stone Shelf was what remained in the modern day. Ghoul Town was pre sort of the hunting down of the region.
So you mentioned that the two are like the original inhabitants are there, but they're kind of undead. Was that because they were like they'd already been consumed, or was the fact that they were undead meant that they were?
No, they were memories. So lots of the residents of Wake were memories, and Crawford had a magic monocle that allowed him to see out of the fog. So he could see where he was in real space.
Ah, okay.
So whilst traversing the forest, sort of the idea is that using the monocle, you could see, okay, it was normal forest. And using the monocle, he could see wisps of people that were real, but not people who weren't. So people that weren't real, that had no presence with the monocle, were completely fake. They were complete memories, or they had been completely consumed, and there was nothing left.
At why they kind of had like a clockwork routine to them. Like they would kind of loop.
Yes. Yeah, they all had their own loops. They kept repeating the same thing. The less Durok Thar knew them personally, the more robotic they seemed.
Ah, okay.
That was why the priest felt less robotic, because he had known Durok Thar on a personal level, so he could improvise and he could say lots of different stuff. Yeah.
Okay. And so after Calrad was separated, what did the party do?
Well, the party went into Wake and they met the town drunk, who Durok Thar knew well. So he was a character who was very sort of alive and still barely, like, he hadn't actually been fully consumed.
Okay.
So that was a original resident who wasn't fully dead yet. Then they went to see the mayor, who that was where they got the first taste of people being quite robotic, because he kept repeating the same phrase. They got a lay of the land, and sort of the idea of the dead mines, Durok Thar's contracts, and the living stone. They walked past the statue and the duolith, again, not investigating it, even though I, in detail, described it every time they look or walk across the center of town. I mean, what do I have to do? The statue walks up to you? No.
I feel like the best way of dealing with it, just because I know the way that the party works, it seems like the only way to properly deal with it is to turn around to them and go like, yeah, so there's a room, and you describe everything else in detail, and then you go, oh, and there's just a chair. And that will catch them, because they'll be more intrigued in the reason why you've not told them something than, dropping actual.
I don't know. It's not a foolproof method, because I'm certain that that's happened before and we've completely ignored it.
It is a definite kind of, crapshoot whether or not.
I'll try it next time I do a shot. I'll see if it works. We'll test it. Science. But yeah, the statue was actually a monster with a stat block, and it could do something similar to the antlered shadow. It could teleport using the fog, very short distances. It would build up momentum in a certain direction, not running at anyone, and then it would teleport with the same momentum and crash someone. Which would have been pretty funny. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. That was why it would be so deadly. Like, he would run into some heavy fog, and then the heavy fog next to you would burst open, and then so sadly, they never investigated the statue, or pissed off the living stone hard enough for it to come and hunt them down. They did visit the church, where they met a tiefling for the first time, and they were glad that you weren't there, because you would have assaulted him immediately. But he was a very devout devil person. Like, he was a tiefling, but he was super devout to, it was the same god that the Valdemites praised. What's it? Tyr, Torm?
Heliod.
Heliod, yeah.
Yeah.
So he was a Heliod worshipper, but he was like very pacifist. It was the total opposite of a Valdemite. And the Pi members were trying to explain, like, oh, we only know Valdemites. Like, don't you know who Valdemar is? And he was like, no, I don't know who Valdemar is. Eventually, like, the priest left, and they found a cellar. The priest didn't leave. They just rolled really high stealth, and they snuck into the cellar, and they found the bones of a saint that was keeping the town protected from the fog to some degree.
Yeah.
The idea being that this holy artifact, because the Lich believed it held power, like this was one of the people who he had met in life, who also helped kill him. Sort of in the end.
Yeah.
Although largely indirectly. And so the sort of saintly bones, if you ever found them in real life, they would also hold power. And I was playing with the idea that they might have actually been real. Like, you know, the saint's bones would still be there if they'd gone back into the forest after the fog faded. And dug up where the church was. Like, or if you dug beneath the church in Stone Shelf, the bones would have been there, which would have been pretty cool. But we never sort of explored that. I kind of forgot about it. But yeah, the bones had power to repel the fog. So that was what you needed. I told them this was sort of what you need in order to, first of all, access the withering. Because there's no way you enter the sphere of the withering without dying. Nothing goes in alive. And so you'd need a protective talisman of some kind. And these bones would be one option. They also found a scroll of sunburst, I think, something like 10d8 radiant damage. And they found a magic sword, which wasn't particularly strong.
Was this the one that Karad wielded at the end, or was it a different one?
Yes, it was the Holy Avenger blade, I think.
Yeah,
it was a Holy Avenger. And you had the murals on the sides of the walls depicting the life and fall of Durok Thar from the eyes of the church. So they had the time when they worked with Durok Thar to defeat the dragon cult, servants of Null, beat them back into the mountains, killed Null, the great dragon, and slew the cult, and then the arising of Wake, and then Durok Thar's deal with Null to raise his servant, and then having to go, and then Durok Thar's death. So they had Durok Thar's death in murals in a town that thought it was about halfway through that story.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's really
so
cool.
Lots of things mixed together. Yeah, lots of mixed messages.
Yeah,
and
can I ask, just because I don't know if you clarify this, the Lich in question, is that Durok Thar or is that?
Yeah, yes, that was Durok Thar. Durok Thar. So, you know, story of a wizard. Bright chap, very intelligent. He grew up sort of in an era when gods were real and walked the earth fairly plainly.
Yeah.
He learned lots of knowledge. He helped kill the servant of Null, the sort of dragon priest or draconic prophet, which was what they called foul eclipse. You know, so, like the sort of Dracolich in essence.
Yeah.
He'd seen the awesome power that undead could wield, even sentient. And he had messed around with the idea of undead contracts, and he had made sentient undead. So he thought that he himself would be able to keep himself going so that he wouldn't, you know, the world wouldn't lose on all the knowledge he'd collected. His work wasn't finished, you know, there were things to be improved. He wanted to protect the places that he had made. So he sought out the one place where he knew sentient undead lived, because he had tried himself and he hadn't reached any clear answers.
Yeah.
So he made a deal with Null. At the bottom of the dead mines, a shrine was made to Null to commune with him. And that was sort of, the mines were close to where the corpse of Foul Eclipse was buried in the earth. Because, you know, the Eclipse's claws were only his claws. The rest of him was buried super underground beneath the basin.
Yeah.
Because the basin is the crater where he fell.
And this dragon was one of, like, the great worms that existed.
Oh, yeah. So this was, I mean, Null is the draconic god of death. So, like, major power. Big bad dragon. And this dragon was super ancient and also a super powerful lich. And he was essentially Null's aspect, his avatar, his prophet. So he, he was always interested in sending fresh souls to Null's domain.
Yeah.
With his breath weapon would prevent people from going to their assigned afterlife. And they would
just
send him to Null's realm.
Oh my god, that's horrific.
Yeah, pretty brutal. And it would also raise their corpses as undead. So the Dracolich had a major power over the forces of life.
Yeah.
And lots of ancient lore. And so he sought out Null, who was the master of death, and made a deal. The deal he made was he would resurrect, so he would make a ritual that would put enough necrotic energy back into Foul Eclipse to bring him back to undeath, to sort of raise him from the dead.
Okay.
And in return, he would get the secrets of lichdom. And Null is not a conniving god. He's very straightforward. But he is very bitter and can hold grudges a long time if you betray him. And that's exactly what Durok Thar did. Durok Thar, he underestimated Null's power in the world. So when he resurrected the dragon, he had brought an army with him to destroy it because he knew it would be weak after he brought it back.
Yeah.
It would have taken time for him to prepare. So he had brought an army of holy avengers. He had warned the place, Durok Thar, the Foul Eclipse is rising again. So he did the ritual and got them to kill it, slaying Foul Eclipse before it could even rise from its earthen tomb. And for this betrayal, because he'd already received the secrets of lichdom, Null smited him, essentially. He turned him into a lich, but trapped him. So his phylactery is made of Levistian ice, unbreakable ice from the hells. He drove the phylactery through his corpse and trapped him within it. So he can no longer leave his phylactery.
Oh, so he's kind of not only is he trapped dead as a lich, but he can't effectively leave his own mind.
Yeah. So he's trapped inside with his own sort of mind, memories, and souls. And the Mist, Durok Thar is still an ancient wizard. So he has a powerful will.
Yeah.
And so ever so slightly over years, he has been attempting to sort of break down the Levistian ice. And the Mist is the broken shards of that ice. So it's essentially him spreading out his phylactery. And so as the mist rolled down the mountain, people were getting sucked up into his phylactery.
I suppose that brings him closer and closer to having enough power to break through.
I mean, not even close. He was a good 2,000 years away from even attempting to free himself. But the focus required to chip away even the slightest amount of Levistian ice was so daunting that I think he was slowly starting to go a little bit mad. So, I mean, we had a whole interaction with Durok Thar at the very end. In Wake, this was after they sort of found this basement. They heard lots of things from outside. They went upstairs. The priest was no longer there. And Apophis was invading the town. And finally, you were there again.
Yeah, back. Well, I was a participant in the same way an active participant can be one when they are tied to a banner and being used as a human blood bag.
Yeah.
But I was keen to help stop whatever Apophis was doing. Largely because he was using me as a blood bag. Yeah. And that's pretty good motivation to not them.
Well, I thought, what might be encouraging so that you would fight with your allies again after you tried to kill one of them? Let's see. Blood bag. Vampire. So, Apophis was a vampire. He had a magic mace that was pretty shadow empowered. He would have been an eager servant of Null. Yeah. Good old Apophis. But during the fight, they had the Holy Avenger, and they managed to break his fucking hammer before he broke theirs, because the hammer had an ability where he would have been able to corrode the Holy Avenger and destroy it had he had an action first. But just in time, you managed to kill him. Or, well, destroy the hammer. He himself attempted diplomacy. He tried to talk his way out of it. And he managed to escape.
Yeah, I think we followed after him, right?
Yeah, he tried to go down to the basement to grab some bones and discovered that the skeleton had already been disturbed and the skull had been smashed. But I think he managed to grab a bone and leave. Like, he got the fuck out of there. And so the rest of the party gave chase to the dead mines, where you went in, you fought a few little undeads, and you finally took care of Apophis by shoving him into a spike pit. And then and then the bag of holding got torn and created a vortex into the memory bank, which pulled in Apophis and was it Crawford and
no, the bag of holding, it was Calrad and Generald died through.
Yeah, Generald and Calrad got pulled in. And so that meant that Crawford and Ricardo visited the Shrine of Null, where Crawford made a deal. He made a deal with Null, which was, something that came up later. A very similar deal to the one that Durok Thar made. And then they came back. They went back through the portal as well, and you were into the world of books.
Yes. I think there we then we arrived at, I think it was like a cottage in this world of books. And that's when the trial by reading began.
Yes. So you had to read his. You had lots of books, and they contained different memories. So you experienced flashes of those memories. The Field of Corpses, wizarding, and there was a small puzzle on a bookshelf that I had set up, which had the Rise, Ambition, and then I had sort of a blank missing book, and then the last book was Fall. And then you had lots of books scattered on the floor. You had Ambition, Wizarding, like Dragon Secrets. You had Pride, and it took, I think, 2 sessions before Seb went, "Wait a minute, Pride cometh before the fall." Like, oh my god, finally.
We were all there just trying to brute force it, taking turns. No, just being zapped.
I was like, this is going to be a simple 10-minute adventure. Come on, in and out.
You severely overestimated the combined IQ of the party.
I mean, to great effect.
All of us except from Seb were kind of like, sure, I'm sure if we spoke in the right places, eventually we'll get it right.
Yeah.
But
this was where I had sort of challenged, because Yolta wanted to join, but he could only join temporarily. So he took on Apophis, who, him being a vampire, semi-immortal, had been dragged into the bookshelf and was being brutally maimed by the Hand Hydra. But he barely survived, dragged himself back, and met the party in the wooden, in the book cottage.
Yeah, I think we kept trying to kill him as well.
He did, but only temporarily. He did manage to talk his way into sort of just, helping you out, because Apophis, he only wanted one thing, and he was very opposed to, Durok Thar getting his way. He wanted the crown. He was fully on board with letting you guys go and do your own thing. Yeah, but I had given Yolda the tasks to, if you see an opportunity where it's risk-free, take it, kill them all.
Yeah.
He'd do it.
Yeah. I have no doubt that he would. To be fair,
Yeah.
playing with him over the course of the 2 campaigns, that's very much his MO. He will take the opportunity if it's available.
But eventually, it didn't need to because it just sorted itself out. I think one of you just straight up, brutally murdered a Apothis. I think it was. Was it you?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I just waited for him to like turn around and then just stabbed him in the back, and like I crit, and then a crit on a paladin with a smite.
That's right.
On an undead creature. It's not ending well.
I mean, safe to say he was atomized.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think at that moment, Karad was very very pleased, because he knew what he'd done was right. Yeah,
a wholly justifiable action.
Mm-hmm.
After that sort of mini adventure in the world of books, where there was a bit of cut content.
Yeah.
So there was a mystic item called the Pen of Secrets, which could repair damaged scrolls, of which there were many that you encountered on your journey. So you would have been
magic scrolls, right?
Yeah, you would have been able to repair magic spell scrolls and rituals using the Pen of Secrets. But the Pen of Secrets was there, but no one picked it up. And originally there was going to be a sort of book tower, and it was going to be like, oh, you're inside a book world. It's like a fairy tale adventure. And so you would have encountered lots of paper people guarding a book tower with a sort of quote unquote princess at the top. But it was only supposed to be a 3-shot, and I thought it doesn't really fit with the same vibe, so we could cut that.
It's noticeably nicer than the dark vibe that has already been kind of set out.
Yeah, it didn't really fit with the. I mean, God, we had the AI image of Relpis, the Dream Eater, who we do need to backtrack a little bit to talk about, because Ricardo, amiable as ever, he didn't know what Crawford had seen when he used the magic monocle to see the true form of Relpis, which was the horrifying AIR image of some disgusting warp shark. Which, I mean...
And Crawford, of course, didn't tell him this, because it was a convenient way of getting Ricardo to do what he wanted. It's just classic Crawford, to be fair.
I mean, the only reason that Relpis looked like that was because Relpis is what she eats. So because she was eating nightmares up to this point, she had a nightmare form. She ate a good memory from Ricardo because he had given permission. And so her form was a little less like this when they woke up. But of course, during the night, she was taken by the fog because she attempted to sort of look deeper into what was going on. I think at Ricardo's behest, and she died. Well, she was taken into the phylactery directly, and she was sort of consumed.
And you know what? As far as Karad goes, good riddance.
Yeah.
Because evil,
I mean, she probably would have been a pretty helpful ally. She could make webs of consciousness, and she would have given you a telepathic bond and all this sort of weird other stuff.
Yeah, but we had to sell our souls for that. And
no, you might have lost a few early memories, but yeah.
I think Kara would disagree.
But that being said, she wasn't just a memory eater; she was a dream eater. So, like, you also might have lost your ambitions, which would have been particularly brutal in Karad's case, I guess.
Oh. So is she almost like a? This sounds really weird, but like an awful relationship, like where she's just there sapping the out of everyone, sap drive and motivation.
No, because I meant dreams in a very literal sense. Like, if you have a dream about you riding a plane and then you fall out the plane, she can eat that. And you'll never dream of that again.
Ah, okay. I thought you meant like...
But it also, like, it's literal. Like, it applies also to more generic dreams that you have repeatedly. Like, if you dream of becoming a pope, she can eat that. and so you will no longer dream of being Pope.
That's messed up.
Yeah, it is messed up, and so perhaps rightly she did get brutally consumed.
Yeah.
But she left. She did leave Ricardo with the Nightmare Catcher, the Dream Catcher, which acted as a token that protected him from some of the other denizens of the fog.
Yeah. And so after that, after all that event happened, and we kind of returned to the party, and I think then we decided to go to Eclipse's claws.
You took a portal through one of the books, and you ended up in a mishmash space. So you ended up in technically you started in the field of bodies, I believe, and then you took a portal into what was called. You went to the Withering first, where you got the crown.
Okay.
And then, you were there with Apophis in the Withering, and that's where you killed Apophis before he could get the crown.
Yeah.
And Crawford took the crown, fulfilling his, sort of partly fulfilling his unspoken promise to Null. And then you went to the Well of Whales, which is where the sort of soul, that sort of thing that's used quite often, where you've got like a sort of maelstrom of ghosts going around in a sort of vortex.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Well of Whales, that sort of idea. And that was where you had Durok Thar's real corpse stabbed by the big ice lance of Levistian Shard that was his phylactery, with him trapped inside. And you made it there. With the crown, Crawford resurrected Foul Eclipse, and the mountain split, and it clawed its way out of the earth. And Durok Thar was like, well, fuck. I'm going to try and convince you guys to help me because something bad's coming. So the BBEG was like, oh, fuck. Guys, help.
And the bad thing that was coming, right, was the thing that Crawford was controlling.
Yes. So Crawford became the BBEG. He became the hostile force against you. I gave him some ridiculous stats with the crown. Like, God, I wonder if I can actually pull up. I should have brought this up before, but the crown of Null was pretty overpowered. Like, it was pretty legendary. I wonder if I called it Null's crown. I'd given, there were a few other things. From the battlefield, Seb picked up the Eclipse Longsword, which was a dragon cult weapon, where if he critted, he would keep attacking until he missed, which is fantastic.
Very anime.
Very anime. Yes, Null's crown. This black onyx crown is forged from the shadows of the Grey Peaks, the dead lands of the dragonkind. Null is their guardian and keeper of the dead. His power courses through the crown, granting the wearer immunity to necrotic and radiant damage.
Holy.
Yes, literally. It's a holy artifact.
That's
and
insane.
Holy of the Dead. And the ability to raise one creature as an undead once per short rest, which is what he used. Any creature. Okay, there is no limitation on creature there. Once per short rest, or resurrect a creature once per long rest. Okay, so he could bring something back to half-life or full life. Whilst wearing the crown, the bearer cannot be killed, except via decapitation, via rare or rarer magic weapon, or a spell of 6th level or higher.
Okay, so we could, if we found a hag that had Finger of Death, we could have killed him.
Well, here's the thing. In the basement of the church, they picked up a scroll.
Oh.
Scroll of Sunburst, an 8th level spell. So these things were, they were coming together.
Yeah.
And in addition, the wearer's constitution increases by 4 immediately. They can also enforce their will on dragons. As an action, a wearer can make an intimidation check against a dragon, DC 16. And on a success, the dragon is duty-bound to follow the command of Null. The dragon is free to disobey, but not without fearing the anger of their own god of death.
Okay.
And when the crown is taken off, the creature wearing it originally suffers 4 levels of exhaustion. So it's a real powerful artifact.
Yeah.
With very few drawbacks. The biggest power, of course, being able to resurrect pretty much anything they want immediately.
Yeah.
And the immortality, the immunity to radiant necrotic, and the ability to not be killed except via decapitation by an especially powerful artifact or an especially powerful spell. So only very strong magic could kill him.
Yeah, and I think in this kind of fight, like kind of this betrayal of the rest of the party, I think Crawford and Generald and Cowrad kind of bonded over, Cowrad's religion, and the desire to defeat Crawford.
Yeah. I mean, there was a sort of wholesome edge to it almost.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Generald was like wholesome as you get. He's a regular guy living a non-regular life.
Yeah.
And Calrad was like, you had the sort of Valdemite pugilist stuff, but then you were facing an enemy that sort of warranted that level of caution.
Yeah.
And there was the sort of good side to faith and fire, which was, well, this is a huge threat. Let's save the world.
Yeah, I think also a big thing. I can't remember. Did we defeat Crawford? Did he escape?
You did kill Crawford.
Mm-hmm.
So as Crawford ordered the dragon to pick him up and take him away, I think someone used the 8th level sunburst to...
Yeah.
they used that 8th level to wear him down to 0 and destroy him. And it was just as he was leaving range, he died.
So I think it was either Generald or Ricardo, because Cowrad had died earlier in the fight, basically doing his best to kind of keep the other two out of danger. And then as he kind of bled out, gave his sword to Generald, and Generald promised to see the task done. And then, as is inevitable,
he became a bit of a martyr for Generald. Yeah,
at least in Generald.
Yeah, and then Generald and Ricardo were left to face the evil alone.
Mm-hmm.
They managed to use the Sunburst Scroll to destroy Crawford, which released Foul Eclipse from his service. And Foul Eclipse actually escaped with the crown.
Yeah.
So that's the
thing out there now.
Gods. Out there now. You have got a Liberty, a dragon, quite kind-hearted, not especially powerful, besides the fact that it's an ancient dragon. And then you have the Draco Lich, which has 9th level spells, and a dragon's constitution and power and breath weapon, and a legendary artifact that prevents it from dying.
Yeah. So effectively, what you've created is a world-ending threat for another campaign.
Yeah. I mean, it's a kaiju for sure. I mean, the only thing holding it back is the fact that it's a dragon. And so by its nature, it doesn't really like other people. It's quite antisocial.
Yeah.
And it can, it's fine with waiting. It has no immediate desire to do stuff.
Yeah, and it's a Dracolich, so it effectively doesn't really have to leave to feed.
No. So it will literally wait out its mortal opponents.
Yeah. Wow. It's...
Yeah, I mean, God, the stakes in that fight, it really came down to the bone.
Mm-hmm. It was pretty
epic.
I remember, I think Harrod died maybe turn 3 into it. He died very, very early, but it was remarkable how close Crawford got to getting away.
Well, the way that we played it was that if you were bleeding out, you could still you could move 5 feet because you know in COD you've got the like a bleed out.
Yeah.
So you had the sort of you could crawl and you couldn't use heavy or really complex items. But if something was simple to use, you'd be able to use it. So you could cast verbal spells, and you could use a scroll, or you could use a crossbow.
Oh, and I think in that case, it might have been Calrad.
Yes, it was. Kralrad used the scroll as he died.
Yeah.
God, what a fucking ending for Calrad.
Yeah. That was his like saintly moment. He was it was I think he used the scroll and then General beheaded him.
Yes! Oh my god. Oh, it was so epic. Yes, you unleashed the true power of the sun.
Yeah.
Which blinded everyone around it, including the dragon.
Yeah.
Absolutely incinerated. Because the idea was that I think that Crawford was already low.
Yeah.
He was already at 0.
Yeah, he was.
Is what he was. He was at 0. He just, because of the effect of the crown, he couldn't be killed. And normally he is immune to radiant damage, but because it's an 8th level spell, the 8th level spell kills him. Yeah. It doesn't technically do any damage. It just undoes the ability for him not to die. It was a sort of technicality in terms of magic.
Yeah.
But it fitted so perfectly. Oh.
And honestly, I think that was I think following it, I think General said that he was going to return the sword that Calrad had found to the Persian theocracy and try and petition for Calrad to become a saint.
Did he succeed?
I don't know. I feel like because this is happening rather closely in time to when it's happening. I think that's still a question that's kind of up in the air. I know that at least in the Valdemite Church, other than Valdemar, it takes about 10 years after someone's death before they're saint. So I guess that's kind of a process that's begun for General.
Damn. Yeah, I mean, we did talk a bit about the idea that it might fracture the church because it's grown so big.
Yes.
The idea of this new sort of, because I think we did make canon that General joined the Valdemite sort of priesthood, and he did gain a rank as a sort of paladin, especially wielding the Holy Avenger.
Yeah. He would have been a useful asset, certainly.
Yeah. I mean, he would have been an icon. He would have been like proper living saint material with that weapon. So yeah, like the idea of the Valdemite faith, which Calrad never fully established with him. So General had like a very mild and pacifist view of it because he'd learned more about it from the priest he'd met than Calrad.
Yeah. I think it probably would have caused a slight schism, not like a massive one like Valdemar's did, but like a minor one in terms of, or at least like one that's beginning to form. In that General probably has a group of followers that are probably teaching something very different than what Calrad actually believes. But
yeah, I mean, I imagine it's probably a civil war in the making.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I feel like the biggest thing from these kind of one shots mini adventures is it provides great bases or like a great basis for the further stories afterwards as well, because the impact of them can be so big.
Yeah.
And I definitely feel like, you know, if the party want to, we could have like a mini campaign or a campaign set a bit more within the church in the future, but it is certainly a civil war in the making.
I would certainly like to see one to play out. I think like we could finally have the Amen, a whole party of clerics.
Well, I mean,
that would be pretty funny.
We'll talk next episode about campaign 2, but the campaign 2 is quickly becoming an anger management class. As the party becomes, I think 50% is barbarians at this point.
Yes. Oh my god, I can't believe it. Yeah.
But
testosterone central. Jeez.
Yeah, and I think I just have to say thank you for the recap, Nick, and thank you for the kind of answering my questions about it, because I had most of the questions that I had were regarding the kind of the time dilation and the mists of it. And also thank you for running it, because at the time I was kind of doing exams, and you allowed, well, a lot of the players to kind of continue playing D&D.
I'm really happy that you actually managed to join in, because I know that you've been DMing forever, so you hardly ever get a chance to actually be a player in one of these things. And I love having you as a player. You're hilarious. Like, oh god, having Calrad there was just chef's kiss.
Yeah, to be fair, I love playing. Like, I love playing in the world, and I love playing with you as DM. I think it's been. I don't know. It means that I get to like engage with parts of my world and like actively build story or lore as like from a player, which is fun. And yeah, it is good fun. It's I miss being a player, but I'm also happy being a DM. If that makes sense.
You know what I do notice though, when it comes to us being players, I think that we often have we have a sort of a better, more narratively super story driven time when we're playing posh people.
Yes, definitely.
Like, think about it: Crawford, Calrad, Valdemar. I mean, God, even like Robert? To some extent, Ricardo.
Yeah. I think what it is there's like when they put on a voice and we pretend to kind of stick to these social norms, we're so in our character's head, we're appalled by the faux pas of being seen doing something.
It's like
social
we believe we are superior, so we are.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we're not gonna, commit petty crimes because we're better than that, and it's just like because we
literally, it's like the reason we're not murder hobos because that is beneath us.
Exactly, because murder hobo, you must first be a hobo, and that is completely.
It would be uncouth to murder someone without throwing a white glove at them first. Yeah, I mean,
or in Crawford's case, to rob them without being elected.
Just like talking about Crawford. After the end of the campaign, he became a Doulahan. Like he had made the deal, and Null doesn't back down on deals. He's straight laced, so he gave him his reward. He turned him into an immortal undead. He has become a Doulahan, a headless horseman, because he got decapitated. So he now roams as a headless horseman, serving the dark dead one's will. Pretty intimidating. And Ricardo went on to his next adventure, and I'm sure we'll see him again in another one shot.
I think Ricardo's the glue that kind of bonds all of the ancillary stories and the kind of the stories together. I feel like we have to have Ricardo appear.
Ricardo is like adhesive canon. He canonizes it.
Oh yeah. Nothing is kind of more in the lore than Ricardo.
At this point, he is essentially Captain Jack Sparrow. Like wherever he goes, interesting things happen, and so it's really all these one shots are really just a tale of Ricardo's life.
Yeah, but I guess with that, I think that's probably the episode in terms of the kind of recap done.
I think that's a good place to leave it, and we can, because we talked a little bit about the setup for campaign 2. We talked about a few of the characters. In fact, where did we get to even? Did we talk about the Girovs and the monster that we killed? Because I'm certain we talked about the mountain lions.
I think we did talk about mountain lions. I think next session or next episode we'll start with a quick recap, because I'm on the notes now of everything that kind of happens in the kind of 30 years between campaign 1 and campaign 2. at least on kind of like the wider scale. And then following up after that, we'll kind of cover everything from the incident with the mountain lions till probably the dwarven city. And what happened when we got there. But other than that, thank you so much, Nick, for joining me again, and thank you so much to a wonderful listener, Seb.
Peter, we need the minutes.
Yeah,
get on it, Seb. Type it up.
Well,
you're the only one listening. It's your job.
Start typing up, little monkey.
Oh man, this could have easily been a on my part. Here's the thing: I always love your brother's characters. None so have I ever loved so much as Crawford. I could have talked for Crawford for literally 2 hours straight. I mean, I need to have Felix on at some point to talk about Crawford.
I think we need to get Felix on. The reason why I haven't got him on this episode is he's got an essay that's finishing up.
That's right. Yeah.
But hopefully next week we'll have him on to talk about all his characters.
Prepare for the gushing that will be me talking about Crawford.
So I think the beauty will be we'll probably do like a grog by a grog followed by
Crawford, God,
followed by his characters.
Amazing.
And other than that, thank you so much for listening, and have a good one.
Have a good one.